Hello, my math buddies. Welcome back. Today we are starting a new math unit over patterns on a coordinate plane. And before we get into it, I do want to kind of remind you of something. You guys, you know how to use a number line to measure distances between 2 points, right? Well, here, I'm going to draw it for you just to remind you of it really quickly. But you guys would usually use a number line to measure distances between 2 points. This is something you guys should have learned in between 3rd and 4th grade. Well, now you guys are going to use 2 number lines at once to measure distances. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I'm talking about. So here I'm drawing the 2 number lines. And these 2 number lines are going to represent X and Y. And what we call this is we call this a coordinate plane. Now, a coordinate plane is a grid system used to describe a point's location in relation to 2 intersecting and perpendicular lines, which is this X and Y line you see here in front of you. Now, on this grid, the horizontal line, it's called the x-axis. Here, I'm going to change my colors and show you that this is the horizontal line, which is called the x-axis. The x-axis will always extend from left to right. And I will go ahead and make a little note of that for you as well. So x-axis, and it always goes from left to right. And also, on the grid, the vertical line here is called the y-axis. Now, the y-axis, it's always going to run up and down. And I'm going to go ahead and draw that on here for you as well. Now, an axis is a line that we use to measure distance on the coordinate plane. To measure distance, the x-axis and y-axis need numbers. Well, how do we even start measuring? Where in the world are we going to start? Well, just like when we start with numbers, we always start with 0. So just like that, there's also going to be a 0 here on the coordinate plane. There is a point where the x-axis and the y-axis intersect. This is called the origin. It's the starting point or it's 0. So we have discovered that a coordinate plane is basically 2 number lines that are intersecting together, creating a y and x axis with an origin number of 0. Now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go more in depth on this coordinate plane here. So I'm drawing you a new coordinate plane with the x and y axis, and we're going to kind of talk about coordinates. Now, the 2 axes of the grid, they divide the coordinate plane into 4 sections. They're called coordinates. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that this top right one here is coordinate 1. This top left one is coordinate 2. This bottom left one is coordinate 3. And this bottom right one is coordinate 4. So this is how we identify points on the coordinate plane, or on the coordinate plane. I don't know why I thought I was saying quadrant plane, but using quadrants as the different sections helps us identify where the points are going to be plotted. But for right now, we're only going to focus on quadrant 1. However, I do want to help you guys with remembering which quadrant is which. And is there anything that you notice about it? Do they look like they're in some sort of order? Do they look like they're out of order? Well, the best way that I can show you is that they are counterclockwise. So they do not go the way that a clock would go. They go the opposite way, like as if we were turning back time. So we start with 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're still in order. They're just going counterclockwise. So I wanted to provide this visual for you so that you could see what I mean, and next time we talk about it, it'll be a little bit easier to remember it. But we can't touch much on it too much. We got to focus on quadrant 1 for right now, and we'll touch back with the rest of them another time. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom on into quadrant 1. I'm going to go ahead and draw you quadrant 1 zoomed in a little bit, drawing my Y and X axis here. And now that we zoomed in, I'm going to go ahead and start numbering my number lines. So I have 10 dashes on my number line because that's all we want to focus on right now. We do not want to go too big with our numbers. We want just enough to help push this through. So what I have on the x-axis, I need to have on the y-axis. And here we go. So to measure an exact location on a coordinate plane, you need two measurements. So we have two number lines. We have a y and an x-axis. So we're going to end up needing two measurements as well. So we're going to start focusing on locating points on the coordinate plane. Even though we are zoomed into quadrant 1, we're still on the coordinate plane. So we're going to learn how to locate points on a coordinate plane. So first off, the two measurements that I was just talking about that we need in order to locate an exact point, well, the two measurements, they're called an ordered pair. And this is kind of what an ordered pair is written as. Not kind of, it definitely is, excuse me. So this is how an ordered pair is written. Okay, you have this first number in the ordered pair, which is the x coordinate. It measures the distance along the x-axis. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that this first number, it's going to fall along this x-axis. So kind of like how we call it a coordinate plane, we're calling it the x-coordinate. Now, excuse me, the second number, you guessed it, it's the y-coordinate, which falls along the y-axis. So just like how we have the x and the y, we're going to have an x and y coordinate. Now, excuse me, we're going to go ahead and plot the ordered pair of 3 and 5. We're going to plot the ordered pair 3, 5, but where do we start? Where are we supposed to start with locating the exact point of 3, 5? Where do we start? Well, I have something that I want you guys to help you remember where to start. So what I want you to remember is crawl before you stand. Crawl before you stand. Now, the reason that I want you to remember crawl before you stand is because it's going to help you with figuring out which points you need to find first and second. So I have boxed in the word crawl and the word stand to help you see that crawl is going to go with the x coordinate on the x-axis, and that the stand goes with the y on the y-axis. So the way that you can remember crawl before you stand is when you guys were babies, you didn't learn to stand up and walk first, did you? No, you learned to crawl around before you learned to stand and walk. So I want you to help that remember you. So we are crawling to point number 3, which is on our x-axis. It's going a little fast. I'm sorry, you guys. But we crawled on to the x-axis over to 3, and we stood up to point 5, and we plotted our point 3, 5. And that's how easy it is, guys. So we're going to go ahead and zoom back into quadrant 1 again, but I'm going to show you a couple more examples of plotting. So give me just a second, and I am going to draw the whole coordinate for you again. I'm going to go ahead and draw the grid lines as best as I can to the full extent. I know that in the last one, we only left it to just the dashes on the number line, but when you guys are actually looking at math problems, it's going to be an actual grid plane. So I want to try and mimic that as best as I can. I know that it's going to look a little funky, just like this lines. Let's fix those real quick. But this is going to help you, I promise. We're going to go through all the steps again of crawling before you stand. And we're going to make this as close as possible to what you would see on an actual math assignment and like the one that you're going to see today. So I have a couple points for you guys. I'm going to go ahead and plot them in a different color so you can see them a little bit better. And I'm not going to use our X and our Y color. I'm going to use purple so you can see it. And we have about 5 points that I want us to look at and practice. All right, here we go. So we have our coordinate plane and we have our ordered pairs, our plots on here, and our points are ready to go. So let's go ahead and start with point A. So we are going to crawl over. There we go. We're going to crawl on the x-axis, which I just realized that I don't have my x and y on there, but we'll get it. So we crawled to the number 6 and we stood up to the number 5. So that means our x, here we go, now I got it written here. That means our x coordinate is 6 and our y coordinate is 5. Okay, so let's go ahead and try our point B. So we are going to crawl to line 5, and we're going to stand up to line 6. So our x is 5 and our y is 6. We just need to keep practicing this because it is going to get a lot easier for you guys. Don't worry. Let's keep going. So we are going to go on point C now. We have crawled over to dash 8 for our x. So that tells us that 8 is our x. And we're going to stand. Oh, wait a second. The C point didn't stand. So what do? Well, when we do not stand and we're still crawling and we're still going to sit, we are still on the x-axis, meaning we're still on 0. So even though we have these dashes from 1 to 10, we can't forget about our 0. We always have to start at 0. So our y, since we did not stand up, we stayed at 0. So our point for C is 8, 0. So now let's go ahead and look at point D. Now on point D, I also noticed that my X didn't crawl anywhere. So that tells us that since we didn't crawl, we stayed at 0. Here, I want to color it for you with the color so that y'all can see it a little bit better. Here we go. There we go. All right. So now, since we didn't crawl on our X, we're going to try and stand on our Y, and we go standing up to 4. So that shows us that point D, our X coordinate is 0 and our Y coordinate is 4. So let's go ahead and look at point E. What do we notice about point E, you guys? Look at this. Point E doesn't crawl anywhere, and point E doesn't stand anywhere. Well, if we're staying in that one little spot, that means we are on our origin, which is 0, 0. So point E is on our origin. My friends, I hope that this was simple enough for you guys to work on your assignment today. You guys are going to be plotting your own points, and I will have a extra sheet for you guys just in case you want to kind of extend your knowledge a little bit and do some extra credit work. By all means, if you guys have any questions or need any more help, I will be happy to show you some more examples. Let me know, guys. Bye.